What is going on, everyone? Hello, and welcome back here into another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. I appreciate you all tuning in here on the show. Make sure you smash that like button and hit subscribe. It's completely free, and it helps us grow significantly. Trying something new here on the show, and I really hope you guys do enjoy. We got a great episode coming up, and the New York Jets selected two players from the University of Miami, and they were two later round players. So I know us fans aren't as familiar with those players as maybe a Mason Taylor or an Armand Membu type guy, but you will become more familiar with these players after today's episode as Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat reporter for The Athletic, is kind enough to grace us with his presence here on the channel. Manny, appreciate you as always, and how you doing?
Doing great, Connor. Thanks for having me on. And, I have a friend of mine who's a huge University of Miami football fan and a huge Jets fan. So I know he will be tuning in to watch this for sure. You're combining
Let's
his two
go.
favorites.
Let's go. We love the yeah. Hey, like I told you prior, I'm not. I don't follow too much college football in season, but obviously you look at the guys that came out of this draft from Miami. It was a super stacked roster. So happy that you got a solid team to cover last season, and two defensive players from Miami went to the Jets in this year's draft. Starting off with Francisco Maui Goa in the 5th round, and I want to start with him because he spent 2 of his 4 college seasons at Miami compared to Tyler Barron's lone season in 2024. When you look at a guy like Maui Goa, who was pretty productive on Miami's defense last year, led their team in tackles. He improved from his first season. What did you really see improvement wise? What category did you see him improve from his first season as a Hurricane to last year?
Yeah, I think with the transfer portal, every single year you deal with sort of being the new guy, right? And so year number 1, when Francisco arrived on campus, it was kind of tough for him to move into that leadership role, even though he was already the starting middle linebacker and probably one of the older, more experienced voices. I think this year you saw him really sort of come into his own from a leadership perspective, and I think that's obviously important in NFL locker rooms, right? You want your middle linebackers, your interior guys to be the vocal leaders. And I think I really saw that part of his game expand as he got more comfortable being on this roster and familiarizing himself in year number 2. So I think statistically, he put up, once again, the number 1 leading tackler on the team. There were times, I think, in coverage that he got beat on a couple plays that he wish he had back, but most middle linebackers don't have to cover a lot in the NFL. Their
Yeah.
job is primarily to shut down the run, and so I think he's going to do a good job of that at the next level.
So he went in the 5th round, Manny. What do you think was a realistic landing spot for him in the draft, given his overall production, his off-field traits? Do you think 5th round was an okay landing spot? Do you think it was a bit of a reach? Thoughts on that draft position?
No, I thought he was a day 3 guy, and I thought for sure he would get picked. I just wasn't sure. It was more about which team really, I thought, liked him and evaluated him and felt like he could come in and immediately contribute to their squad, even if it was on special teams or in a smaller role. And I think he's a solid player. Like I said, I think character wise, he fits an NFL locker room. He's going to fit in fine just there. And I think the Jets obviously we're looking for some help at that linebacker spot. They're looking for somebody who's played as much as he had, close to 2,000 snaps in his career in college, and it wasn't just in Miami. He was a starter at Washington State as well his sophomore season in 2022. So it's 3 years of starting experience, 3 years of playing at a high level against Power 4 teams, and the kind of guy that you think is ready to come in and contribute on an NFL roster.
What do you think his ceiling is, Manny, at the NFL level? Because we spoke a lot about his special teams value. I've said all along since the Jets made this pick, and I've really gone to dig into it. 2023, this is a guy who had surgery on both of his shoulders. The way I project his role right away, I mean, the Jets have Quincy Williams. The Jets have Jamie and Sherwood as their 2 starting linebackers. They don't have that much depth, though, so that's why I was okay with the pick. You get Maui Goa in there as that depth piece who could be somewhat of a rotational linebacker for you, but primarily be a special teams contributor. Though, what do you think his ceiling is at the NFL level? Do you think he has the potential to come in and be a starting linebacker on a team, whether it's now, whether it's 3 years from now, and also be a primary special teams contributor?
Yeah, I look. Miami's put out a lot of guys like Maui Noah in previous years. I remember Shaq Quarterman. He was on the Jacksonville Jaguars roster. I think I kind of look at him in the same line of thinking. Quarterman never really became a starter, but he was a guy who played a lot on special teams and contributed when there were injuries. He came off the bench. He'd play 30, 40 snaps a game if somebody needed a break or somebody was banged up. And he was a solid, contributor. Nobody that, necessarily shined or was going to become a Pro Bowler, but a guy who was a solid pro for several years at that linebacker spot. And I think Maui Noah sort of built the same way. I look at them very similarly in terms of just their instincts and the way that they play in coverage. And I think that's the part of it that's the challenge for him is you have to be really good in coverage in the NFL these days if you're going to be a 3-down linebacker. Otherwise, you're coming off the field on 3rd down. And I think, in Maui Noah's case, he's a guy that will be a run stopping specialist. That's what he's good at. That's what he can contribute doing for an NFL team. So I think you're right. I think you're right to project him as sort of maybe the 3rd or 4th guy at that linebacker spot for the Jets. A guy who ultimately can fill in when needed, but maybe not a true everyday starter in the NFL.
Now moving on to Tyler Barron, who I named my favorite value selection for the New York Jets. And of course, he was their last pick. I wrote an article about that for JetsXFactor.com. This is interesting because the Jets stuck in pick when it came to Maui Goa, but then the Jets traded up 15 spots to land Tyler Barron. And this is someone who maybe you might not be as familiar with, given he only spent 1 season with the Hurricanes. First 4 years at Tennessee, where he was really, really explosive, provided great pass rushing value, was a great run defender. And then he comes into Miami, maybe didn't live up to the high expectations he had coming in from the portal, but certainly played meaningful snaps for this Miami team. Manny, how do you think Tyler Barron is going to be able to fit in at the NFL level?
I think he's got a higher ceiling than Maui Noah. I think he's the kind of guy who has the NFL body at 6'5", 260 pounds. If he can figure it out, if he can develop the consistency to be a starter in the NFL, he's got the frame, he's got the explosiveness. His issue has always just been consistency. And if you go back and you look at this season, got off to a great start. I think got 4.5 sacks his first 3 games. And then really 1 sack down the stretch for Miami and just wasn't much of a factor. In fact, he was put on the bench the last 3 games of the season and came off the bench because he wasn't responsible enough when it came to his run stuffing duties. He was so just hunting for sacks that the coaching staff, I think, ultimately decided, hey, we're going to put somebody else in there. You're not giving us what we need right now. And so for me, you see the upside with Tyler. It's can the coaching staff, can the NFL team get the most out of him? And that'll be the question with him. But he's got talent and ability. It's just a matter of consistency.
You mentioned the high ceiling, Manny. I actually agree there's a high ceiling, but also a high floor for me as a rookie. I think the worst case scenario really for Barron, the way the Jets edge room is set up right now with Will McDonald obviously leading the way with 10.5 sacks last year. And then behind him, Jermaine Johnson coming off an Achilles injury. You look past Jermaine, it's Michael Clemens, Rashad Weaver, and then 3 undrafted free agents. I think Tyler Barron could come in and he could be a young athletic guy who maybe comes off the edge on 3rd down, provide you some run stuffing value, but then also as a special teams contributor. I think that's the worst case scenario. At best, the Jets took a 5th round flyer on someone who might be their long-term answer off the edge. I think it's just a very low risk and a very high reward. That's why I really like the Tyler Barron pick. Not to mention, while he's far from a complete player, he fits the mold of someone who Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilkes wants on their team. Plays with a high motor, very, very speedy. So Tyler Barron is certainly a pick I really like for this team. Any off-field stuff, Manny, with Tyler Barron that we should be aware about?
No, I mean, I know obviously he was banged up, when he transferred from Tennessee to Louisville and then Louisville to Miami. It was a very short stint at Louisville. I think he had some injury issues and some questions, and we thought maybe there was a chance he wouldn't start the season. Well, he starts the season off with a bang. Like I said, 4.5 sacks in those first 3 games. But to me, I don't know that there's necessarily any serious character issues. I just think that at times he can go hunting for the sack a little bit too much. At least he did in college. Now, if you're going to be a role player, a 3rd down rush specialist, then Tyler Barron fits exactly what you want him to be, in terms of the makeup and the mental makeup. I just don't think he's an every down edge defender because he will at times give up on the run to go hunting for the quarterback, and he got himself in trouble doing that at Miami.
Same question I asked you about Maui Goa. 5th round for Tyler Barron. Do you think that's a solid value pick?
Yeah, I think for his upside and potential, yeah. I mean, I think, if things work out and he figures it out at the NFL level, he can be a guy who can get you 6, 7 sacks a season because he's very good at getting the quarterback. And if you have that as a second, third edge rusher on your team, I don't think he's a true number one, but I think he could develop into a true number two.
Certainly.
And be a guy who has a pretty good NFL career, but it's going to require discipline on his part and some coaching that gets him to maximize his potential.
Now, Manny, what pick overall do you like more for the New York Jets? I know you cover Miami, so you might not be as familiar with the Jets' positions of need. So overall, though, which player did you like more entering this draft?
For between Barron and Maui Noah.
Yeah, who did you have higher ranked?
Yeah, I think coming from the college perspective, I would say Maui Noah because he was more
Okay.
consistent than Tyler Barron was. But I think from an NFL perspective, I think you look at it and you say Barron has the higher upside. Like I said, he's a guy that could project to do more. I think Maui Noah is limited in terms of his ability and coverage, and I think ultimately, I'd rather take the higher ceiling guy with a 5th round pick than a guy who kind of what he is in Maui Noah.
I'm not like I know a lot more about Barron than I do Maui Goa. The linebackers I was focusing on this year's draft, who were still on the board when the Jets took Maui Goa, were Cody Simon from Ohio State and Kobe King. So I was a little disappointed when they took Maui Goa just because
Yeah,
I did a lot of prep on both those guys and I really wanted one of them to be New York Jets. But in the next few days, I've watched a few of his games, not really much to complain about. I think he could be a solid again. When you reach day 3, you're taking flyers on players. But at the
yeah.
same time, GMs and Super Bowl contenders hit on their top 75 picks every single year. No doubt those are guys who come in and are Pro Bowlers for the really talented teams year one. But then the teams that really have success, like the Eagles, like the Lions, like the Chiefs, they find gems on day 3 and turn those guys into starters who have success. I always go back to the example of Jordan Mailata with the Philadelphia Eagles in the 7th round. They used a 1st-round pick on Andre Dillard. They thought that was going to be their left tackle of the future. Then they took someone who played rugby in the 7th round and Jordan Mailata and converted him into an all-pro just 3 years later. So, I mean, hey, if the Jets could turn Maui Goa and Tyler Barron into just regular, steady contributors on this team's defense, I think that would be an absolute value steal. But Manny, appreciate you sparing some time for us as always. Can't thank you enough for hopping on. And the final question I ask to every single guest I have here on the show, non-football related, for dinner, it can include a football figure actually, for dinner guests, anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would you take to dinner?
Well, as a guy who covers the Miami Hurricanes and has been in this city for a long time, I would take Pat Riley because, and I know Knicks
Ooh.
fans probably don't appreciate that one, but he's been the architect of the greatest organization here in South Florida, the Miami Heat, that's won 3 NBA championships. I would go with Jimmy Johnson, who I know coached the University of Miami, won a couple Super Bowls with the Cowboys. And then probably Dan Marino, just because he was my favorite quarterback as a kid growing up, and I love those Jets Dolphins games for many years. And
Well,
I
the
guess
Jets
I'd be the
did.
4th one.
Yeah, the Jets did on pass on him for Ken O'Brien, but hey, Kenny O had a winning record on Dan
Yeah.
Marino. Anyways, Manny, you're the best. You got any final thoughts here before we wrap the show up?
No, I'm very interested to see how some of these guys on Miami's defense turn out because in the end they were the reason Miami didn't do more with Cam Ward. At the end of the season, from a team perspective, I didn't necessarily think the problems were with guys like Tyler Barrett and Maui Noah. I thought the secondary was Miami's primary issue. You notice nobody in Miami's secondary got drafted, but
Yep.
I'm very interested to see how Maui Noah and Barron pan out at this level because Miami, when they were dominant, they were sending 7, 8 guys to the draft every single year, and they need Tyler Barron and Maui Noah to have successful careers so they can start selling that to recruits and to players and say, hey, we don't just put 1st-rounders in there. We get 5th-round guys that have good careers too. And I think that's important for the progress of the program.
Manny, much appreciated. As always, everyone, I appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like and hit subscribe. That'll do it for us. He's Manny Navarro from The Athletic. I am your host, Connor Long. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. And as always, JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets.